This is not for their mouth, this is for their behind. So apology horses, but do not worry, I'm going to have one of the horses volunteer a little bit later and I'm going to be taking their temperature. And welcome back to another episode of my beginners series. Today I'm going to be going through all of the things in my kind of emergency first aid kit, although I feel like I shouldn't really call it my beginners series because I feel like with horses you never stop learning, so you never know, you might learn a thing or two today. Anyway, before we get in, I just thought I'd say the reason why I'm on this bench kind of in the garden away from the horses is because I have a bucket here, I have first aid kit things. I know that if I'm anywhere near them they will be getting their grubby little faces in here and getting everything filthy, which probably isn't best when your first aid kit is supposed to be pretty sterile, so that is why. But do not worry, we are actually going to be joined by the horses a little bit later on when I go through some observations and health checks. So anyway, let's get into my emergency horse first aid kit. So starting off, one of the things I thought I would go through before I even get into the first aid kit, which has been very useful for me personally because my horses have shoes, and that is to have some farrier tools. So I've actually done a previous video all about shoeing and things, and my farrier has actually trained me on how to remove a shoe. I did not realise how useful of a skill that would be until I first got Joey, because when we first got him, oh my goodness, he was such a baby and he was always sort of like pulling off his shoes. So they would kind of be like half off and I'd like have to emergency take them off myself. So I have a buffer, I have a hammer, I have a rasp, and then I have some pincers, or these are kind of for levering off the shoe. So if your horse is shod, I would definitely recommend getting yourself some farrier tools. I keep these next to my emergency kit. I don't actually keep them in there because they are a little bit dirty and I don't want everything to get sort of dusty and dirty in my kit. So starting off, I have a bucket. Now this is my sterile bucket. I only use it in emergencies. This is actually a new one, as you can probably tell, so don't worry, the horses do not eat their food out of this. That's why it's got a big cross on, so everyone knows do not use this unless it's an emergency for putting sort of sterile water in, cleaning wounds, that kind of stuff. Also, something really useful to have at the yard is a kettle, especially if you have electricity. We've always been quite lucky that the house is quite nearby, but now the yard does have electricity, we do have a yard kettle, and that boils the water, so it kills a lot of the germs if you do want some water that is sterile. Obviously, you do have to wait for that to cool down before you put like boiling water on your horse. In here, I also have a sterile and clean towel. I do have another towel as well because when Joey had his injury, we found out towels were very useful, especially for putting pressure on a wound. So here is the actual first aid kit. It's in a waterproof container, so no dirt and things can get in. Also, it is a very bright colour, so it stands out and everyone can kind of see with the big white cross on that it is an emergency first aid kit for the horses. It's also very good to have a human one, but don't worry, I won't be going through the human stuff because that's kind of just basic first aid knowledge. Horses, however, are a little bit more complicated. So anyway, it's also very useful in your first aid kit to maybe have a list of all the things when they go out of date, so if you do need to restock things, you know, when it goes out of date. Also, it's a good idea to have your vet's phone number in here. Luckily with modern day, everyone's got mobile phones now, so I have my vets in my contacts, but maybe if you're in a livery yard and you're not at the yard all the time and there are other people caring for your horse, it might be a good idea to put your vet's phone number in here. So if I open it up, I have lots of different bits and bobs. I do have another sterile towel because towels are, again, very, very useful. I'm going to be going through all of the things that you kind of need to care for minor injuries and also to care for major injuries before the vet comes. Obviously, if there is a major injury, get your vet in as soon as possible and do what you can to try and help your horse. So, starting off, this is actually a few things that I'm going to be going through a little bit later with the horses. This isn't an essential, but it's also very useful to have one, is a stethoscope. You can use this to listen to your horse's heart rate, also to your horse's breathing, because it's really good to have an idea of what your horse's heart rate is, what their temperature normally is, and what their respiration rate normally is, so how quickly they're sort of breathing. Just because if your horse does have something wrong wrong with it, it's good to know what's different and what would be abnormal for your horse. I also have a thermometer. Now, it's really important to have a special pet thermometer. This is the sort of ones that you'll find at vets. This one is plastic. Do not ever use a glass thermometer in your horse. And also, this is not for their mouth. This is for their behind. So apology, horses, if I ever use this or when I ever have to use this. It's probably not that fun, so do be careful when taking a horse's temperature. Always stand by the side because you do not want to get kicked, because I'm sure they're not going to be the biggest fan of having this up their bottom. But do not worry, I'm going to have one of the horses volunteer a little bit later and I'm going to be taking their temperature. So I haven't picked which horse it's going to be yet, so it might be interesting. Okay, next I have some jelly. This is like petroleum jelly, and if you guessed by the thermometer of what I use it for, it's for putting a bit on the thermometer so it slides in nicely. Cool, this is an interesting video I'm filming today. Anyway, so that is what the jelly's for. I have an absolutely huge tub, probably didn't need one that big, but the next thing is something that I have used a lot over the years, and that is purple spray. I'm pretty sure this has iodine in, and basically this is what you spray on any sort of minor cuts and things. I've had to use this a lot on Joey over the years. He was a very accident prone horse. I literally used it yesterday because he cut himself, I don't know how, in the field. He's just a bit clumsy. And he then rolled and rubbed his face on his leg where I sprayed it, and then had a purple face. This spray does, you know, it makes them purple for a little while. I remember Willa had to have a bit of purple spray on her ear, and she had a purple ear for about a month, I feel like. So yeah, your horse might have a bit of a funky hairdo if you do use this, but it is very good, and again, just keeps it all nice and clean and stops all the bacteria and stuff going in that. Also, something else very useful to use is saline eye wash. You can also use this on wounds because it is saline, it's sterile. Again, I have a huge bottle of this, but it's always good to have just in case. Also, if your horse ever has any sort of injury to the eye, that is one thing that I definitely recommend calling the vet out. Like, the eyes are one of the things where it's like, ooh, that is pretty serious, you should get a professional to look at it. Also, if you're never sure or if you're worried, please call a vet. There have been times where I've called the vet even just for advice, or there's been a wound and I'm like, I'm not sure if this needs stitches or not, or if it's just a minor one. I've sent photos through to them, to my vet, and they've been like, no, that's all good, or no, actually I should come in and do something. One of the also most important things that you'll find in your first aid kit, I feel like I'm saying this for a lot, is a pair of scissors, because I feel like scissors are so difficult to find around the yard at the best of times, let alone in an actual emergency. So having a pair of scissors is very useful if you need to cut anything, if you need to, especially with bandages and stuff, very, very useful. I also have a second pair of scissors in here somewhere. So these are actually a special pair of grooming scissors. I think these are actually like dog grooming ones. And the reason why these are so special is because they actually have a sort of rounded edge. So for example, Mickey has quite hairy legs, especially in the winter. So if he had a wound on his legs and I needed to get to it, but all his hair was kind of in the way, I could use these scissors to gently cut around the hair or his coat to get rid of the fluff, so I could get to the wound a little bit easier. So that's why having some round edge scissors are quite useful. Something else useful to have are some tweezers, especially if your horse maybe gets a thorn in their leg or some sort of, I don't know, splinter. Also be careful if it is a really big thorn. It might be better to call a vet and get the vet to remove it, especially if it is very, very deep. So please be careful when it comes to thorns. Yeah, thorns are not very nice. I've had some friends that have had horses that have had thorns in not very good places, so be careful with them. I also, this might be a little bit extreme, I have some wire cutters. Now, these were actually very useful back in the day. So when it was just Mickey and Casper, before we had Joey and Duke, a lot of our old fencing, or even I think this was more with Mickey really, before we even had Casper, a lot of our old fencing used to be sheep netting, because the previous people that used to live here, I guess, had sheep. Now, it was fine with the donkeys because the donkeys have such small hooves. Their hooves would never get stuck in the sheep netting, but once Mickey, when he used to have shoes, he doesn't have shoes anymore, he's barefoot, he actually got his hoof stuck in the sheep netting and we had to sort of use wire cutters to cut it away. Also, if you have any sort of I wouldn't recommend that. We've now got post and rails, so it's all very safe fencing. But yeah, if for whatever reason you're at a yard that's not your own and there's any sort of wire or barbed wire, I would recommend having wire cutters. Even if you have like electric fence, that's why I have them. Like for whatever reason, like horses are the most accident prone animals on the earth. If they get tangled up in some sort of string or some sort of electric fence, I don't know, wire cutters are very useful. Again, if you couldn't find your scissors, these are the next best thing. Also, it's quite useful to have some baler twine in here as well, or some sort of string, just like all the things where you're like, what could I need in some sort of emergency? So there we go. Even like a spare head collar or lead rope. I do have quite a lot of head collars and lead ropes, so that's why I don't have any in here, because it's kept at the yard where my huge collection is. So there we go. Something else that's probably not in your normal first aid kit, but I have one because it's very useful. If something happens at night or in the winter when it's very, very dark, it's also useful to have a head torch. The last thing you want to do, I feel like whenever there's some sort of injury, if you're wrapping a bandage or that kind of thing, you always feel like you need a third arm. So when you've got, you know, a head torch on, you don't have to be worrying about holding like an actual torch and then trying to do something one-handed. So a head torch is very useful, and just like a normal torch in general. A hoof pick is also very useful. Again, you might be like, Esme, I've got a hoof pick in my grooming kit, but how many times have you lost your hoof pick? I feel like every equestrian has at least lost like a couple hoof picks. So having a spare one in here as an emergency is always a good shout, especially if you have some sort of hoof related injury that you need to look at. We're probably going to be going on to the more sort of like medical stuff now, to try and keep everything organized. I do have everything, like I don't like to have too much stuff in here. I feel like sometimes if you have loads of stuff in here and it's like almost exploding and it's crammed in there, it's really difficult to find things. So it's good to have just like the right amount of stuff. So for example, in here I actually have a brand new packet. I have some gloves, especially if you're dealing with wounds and your hands maybe are a little bit dirty because you've just been dealing with the horses, especially if it's the winter and they're muddy. Putting on some gloves is a really good idea to keep everything sterile and clean. Also, if you're dealing with something a little bit nasty, you might want to wear gloves. I also have this box, which inside the box, I have an array. I actually bought this when Joey had his injury. I have an array of lots of different coloured vet wrap. Now vet wrap, you might see vets use it on, you can use it for dogs, you can use it for horses, you can use it on cats. You can go for whatever funky colour you wish. I think at Christmas the vet was like, oh, should we put like a green one on him or a red one on him, so he was a little bit more festive, but that was when he had his injury. But anyway, I do have a huge packet. I did go a bit overboard because I really thought, you know, Joey was going to be wrapped up for a good old while. And then I also have some sort of, actually we should probably go on to the more sterile kind of things first. I'm kind of going outwards in. What should we go for? Should we go for poultice? So here I have some poultice. This is for, this is actually very useful if, for example, your horse has an abscess. This is probably what I use most for poultice for. And abscesses, abscesses, the horses have actually had a few over the years. I think Joey, touch wood, is the only horse that has not had an abscess yet. There was this one period where Casper kept getting abscesses, but it seems all right now. I feel like horses tend to get them when it's a little bit wetter, so more in like the winter kind of time. So that's kind of like where they've basically, in their hoof, there's a bit of pus that needs to be taken out. Now, we've got a really good farrier. Our farrier has dealt with our horses' abscesses before, but if it's something that's really serious, then of course go to your vet. But a lot of the time it's just a bit of pressure and it needs releasing, and then you put a poultice on, and this basically just draws out all of the pus, all of the disgustingness, and of course keep it in a wrapper, keep it nice and clean. I also have a massive roll here. Again, bought it when Joey had his injury. If you couldn't tell what it is, this is Gamgee or Gamgee tissue. So this is really good to kind of wrap around where the wound is. So for example, so you'd put your poultice on first and then you'd wrap it in the Gamgee. I actually have some extra stuff here, which is useful for wrapping around. And just to put a lot of pressure on it. And then lastly, you wrap it with your vet wrap. And if it's some sort of hoof related injury, if you really need to keep it some like clean, that kind of stuff, it's also good. Well, I have gaffer tape here, or some sort of like waterproof tape, and this actually keeps everything nice and dry. So if it is very wet for whatever reason, obviously if your horse needs to be on box rest, that's probably the best thing to do, because you do not want that wound to get infected. So that's why Joey was on box rest for quite a long time. I also have some tape here, electrical tape, just because I find this stuff is really good. It's really sticky as well. So because Joey, again, will probably try and, well, he did try to do stuff to his bandage, like scratch his head on it. Like that horse, I don't know how he's still here, but I'm very grateful. Anyway, so this electrical tape's really good at sticking everything together as well, over the top, obviously. You don't want to stick this to your wound. And then I just have I have a lot of tape in here. Tape is very useful. This is actual, like, doctor bandage tape. What else do we have in here? I feel like that's most. I have like a special hoof-shaped poultice. I have a lot of like extra stuff as well. I have some dressings. These are just like a sterile dressing pad, if you don't want to use a poultice. But yeah, and then this is literally like a human, like big old plaster in case that is needed as well. But obviously, like, human plasters just don't really stick to horses very well, because horses are a bit on the hairy side. But I feel like that is most things in here. I don't want to forget anything. Of course, sterile cotton pads and cotton wool is really useful as well for cleaning things, so I would recommend using that. But I'd say that is pretty much everything inside my first aid kit complete. Let me know in the comments if there's any other things that you have in your first aid kit that are a little bit different, or maybe I've forgotten. For example, I've got my head torch. I feel like that's a really useful one that not many people would normally think about. But we're going to head to the yard now, where one of the horses is going to be my volunteer for the day, and it's going to have their temperature read. Who do you think is going to be? I feel like Casper might be the best, actually. He is very good at... He's so dirty at the moment, though. I feel like Duke's a bit mean. That's pretty mean. Joey's not going to be a happy boy. Mickey would probably be all right, but he's a bit dirty as well. I'm going to have to go and groom a horse now. Okay, I'm going to pop everything back. Also, before I get Mickey, there are 2 extra things that I'd recommend having in your first aid kit. I just keep these up at the wash bay for easy access, because I do use these a little bit more often than the other bits and bobs. So first off, we have Sudocrem. This is sort of like an antiseptic cream. If any of the boys have any cuts and things, I also put this on. Especially Mickey, he has very sensitive skin, so sometimes, especially in the winter, there are a few problem areas that we like to treat with this. And then also is Hibby Scrub. This is a antimicrobial scrub. This is really good for cleaning areas. So yeah, these little extra bits and bobs I would recommend putting in your emergency kit. Give me a minute while I get this boy clean. So Licky Mickey here has volunteered as tribute to be our model horse today. Some of the things that you can just go through to start off that you don't need any equipment for is just first off looking at what your horse is looking like. I've done this in a previous episode with Bailey's, where you can body condition score them. So at the moment Mickey is looking a little bit ribby. That's because he's an older horse, and also because he has been clipped. So apologies about that, but he does have quite a cresty neck and bum. That's just where he tends to put weight on. He really struggles to put weight on his body, but don't worry, we've been working with Bailey's and his condition is looking good at the moment. Also, another thing that you can look at is their mucous membranes. So Mickey already has a pink nose, but if we, sorry Mickey, I'm gonna have to stop licking here, lift up his sort of mouth here, you can kind of see the pink colour underneath. That is what you need to look at, and you really want that to be a salmon pink. You don't want it to be too yellow, because that could indicate jaundice, and you don't want it to be too blue either. So it needs to be a nice salmon pink. And you are a very pink pony, aren't you, Mickey? Yes. All right, I'm going to grab my phone now. I'm going to do some timers. You can do this on a watch as well, but I've got my phone here, so that's what I'm going to use. So I'm just going to put it onto timer while Mickey absolutely attacks me. You vicious wild animal. You beast, hey? I mean, you're not going to be too happy with me later on, I can tell you that. Anyway, onto the stopwatch. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Mickey's respiration rate, so his sort of breathing rate. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stand kind of here, and if I look at kind of his tummy area, you can see when he breathes, his rib cage kind of rises and falls. So one sort of rise and fall, I'm going to count as one breath. And we're going to count how many breaths he does in 15 seconds. 15 seconds. I was going to say 15 minutes then. Okay, are you ready, Mickey? Ready, set, go. It's going to be tricky because it's going to move. And in, and out. So Mickey had 3 breaths in 15 seconds, and then we just need to times that by 4 to make it up to a minute, which is 12. So Mickey had 12 breaths a minute, which is about average for a horse. Normally it's around 8 to 15, so 12 is pretty much bang on in the middle. So Mickey, you're a very average boy, so I can write that down for what Mickey's average sort of breath is. Hey, your breath rate? Mwah. All right, shall I get my stethoscope out? Yeah? So next I have my stethoscope here. You can use one with or without. I'll show you the with version first. So if I pop this in, and then I want to put this where Mickey's heart is, which is normally just back here behind his shoulder. All right. Oh, that's weird. It's interesting listening to a horse's heart. So I'm going to count how many beats there are in 15 seconds. So I'm going to get my timer out again. You can use a watch. Again, I'm just using my phone because I prefer seeing the numbers. Okay, are you ready? So I've just measured Mickey's heart rate. He had 10 beats in 15 seconds. So again, times that by 4 to make it up to a minute. So that is 40 beats per minute. So the average horse is around 36 to 40 beats per minute. So Mickey, you're pretty good, pretty average. Again, do this at rest. Do this while they're chilled out, not after they've just been exercised, because that will probably be a little bit different. Now, if you don't have a stethoscope, you can use your fingers instead. So if you use these 2 here and then just go under your horse's sort of chin area up here, you might be able to feel a little thing that feels like a piece of string or a bit of spaghetti. That is an artery. Now you just have to put your fingers on there, and then you should be able to feel a pulse, and then you just calculate the beats as we did before. Hello. Oh, thank you. That's also how you can check if a horse is alive, but I think we can tell that this boy here is definitely alive, aren't you, mister? Full of energy for an old man. So you can just put your ear up to their stomach, but I'm using the stethoscope here to listen to Mickey's gut sounds, as it's quite good to know what your horse's normal gut sounds are, especially as there was this one time where Joey actually had colic. I don't think I ever talked about this in a video because luckily he was all right in the end, but some of the signs for colic, if you're wondering. So we actually put Joey in his stable. One of the first things where I knew something was wrong was, number 1, he was not eating. Joey and all of my other horses absolutely love food and will do anything for food, so him not eating was a big sign. The second sign was he went down to roll, but it wasn't how he normally rolls. It was almost like he was kind of kicking his stomach. I could tell that he was in a lot of stomach pain. So what I did was I got him up as soon as I kind of realised, okay, this is not normal Joey. I started walking him around in the arena, because the best thing you can do if a horse has colic is to get them moving, get them walking, and do not let them roll. So as soon as I realised, I was like, Joey, you are getting up, get up, boy. And the vet very kindly came out straight away. This was in the evening when I was putting them in the winter, and basically Joey just had a bit of compaction. He was very basically Joey was constipated, but for horses this can be really fatal, especially if their intestines twist and things like that. A lot of horses can have to go in for surgery if they have colic. Luckily he was all good. They just needed to flush some fluids into him. For some reason he just wasn't drinking. A lot of horses can get colic if there's been a sudden change in temperature, so I think we were going from autumn into winter and it just got really cold, and for some reason he wasn't drinking his water because maybe it was a little bit colder. So the silly boy got a bit horsey, constipated. Luckily he was all good, flushed loads of stuff into him and he was fine. He was pooing again, so that was another thing. We just got him in, so we didn't realise he hadn't done many poos, but that's another thing to look out for. So anyway, Mickey, he has had everything done to him, but I was going to say we're leaving the best till last. Maybe it's more the worst till last, because I know that once I take his temperature, he might not be too happy with me. I'm sorry, Mickey. You've got some haylage, you've got some nice snacks, I'll get him some treats afterwards, but yeah, time to take his temperature. Lucky for you lot, and for Mickey, I did give him a little bit of a bum wash when I got him in, so hopefully it's not looking too disgusting. I have my Vaseline jelly here. I have my horsey/pet thermometer, which is plastic. I'm just gonna get a bit of jelly on that, petroleum jelly. Okay, I'm gonna pop this away so I have both my hands. So I'm just gonna turn it on. I'm very sorry, Mickey. 800,000 people are going to see your bum hole. Luckily you are a horse. Oh, there is a little bit of dirt on there. Oh well. Okay, and then when you put it in, you kind of want to twist it. Sorry. Kind of want to twist it a little bit. And then just put it to the side. And then it will beep, because it's a modern one, and it will tell me when his temperature is ready. So Mickey's temperature is 37 degrees. So a normal horse will probably be around 37 to 38. So there we go, it's beeping now at 37, but there we go. Temperature done. Mickey, you're an absolute trooper. He did that so well. I mean, he is an old boy. He's probably had his temperature taken quite a few times over the years, but well done, Mickey. Yeah, again, I was standing to the side just in case he wasn't too happy about having that done. And I also braided his tail because I thought, you know what, we do not want that getting in the way. Well done, Michael. You're such a good boy. All right, because Mickey has been such a good model today and he was a good boy having his temperature taken, I'm just going to give him some treats. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching today's video. Hopefully all of the things I've been through you won't have to do with your horse and you won't ever have an emergency. But the thing is, with life and with horses, you never do know. So if you ever get into an emergency, I hope these tips have helped you, or maybe even help you save your horse. But anyway, obviously always take your vet's advice as well, and if you ever are worried about anything, please call your vet, please ask for professional advice. But these are just some basic horse care kind of things that is useful to know. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching today's video. Let me know in the comments what other sort of beginners series videos you would like to see. Also, if you're new or haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out and I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Bye. Oh my goodness, I am getting lick attacked. Are you licking me? Happy boy. All right, you can go back out to Duke now. You can tell him about your adventures. Yes, or maybe you don't want to tell him about your adventures. I mean, a lot of people are going to hear about your adventures, Mickey. Come on in.